What's up, Rat Pack? Episode 2. We're going to be talking about gold. Alright, so from what I know about gold is that it's a good bet against inflation, or that you kind of hold it to keep your purchasing power.
Yeah.
And I don't actually understand at all what the use of gold is other than to do that. Do people actually use gold as a commodity?
Yeah, I mean, gold's used in a lot of products, right? Semiconductors, watches, jewelry is the biggest one. Biggest user of gold.
Okay.
It's in the cars, it's in everything. Anything electronic, right? So you know, that's one part of the equation, but the reason why you use gold, as an asset, as a part of your portfolio, is like you said, one of the reasons is to hedge against inflation.
Yeah.
Right? Because all inflation means is that the dollar is becoming less valuable the year after. And that means usually that the government's printing money, right? So they're printing a lot of money, they don't make the money worth anything. So gold, there's a finite amount of it pretty much, There's some new discoveries here and there, but there's only an infinite supply of gold. You can't print gold, right? So that's why it holds its value. But, gold also does really well in a recession, right? So when growth is really low, businesses aren't making much money, what do you go to for yield? Gold. Because you're not going to buy bonds. Because if the economy is doing bad, then interest rates will get dropped. We already know this, right?
Yeah.
Because of how the Fed acts, right? The Fed will do anything to keep the economy afloat. So they'll drop rates. So, can't buy stocks, can't buy bonds. Real estate is probably not doing all that well. So you buy gold.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
So what is a fiat because a fiat a currency is like where some economies rely on their connection to gold for their monetary value or something along the lines. I don't understand fiat.
I mean, all fiat means is currency, right?
Yeah.
So USD,
Okay.
that's fiat.
Okay.
Hong Kong dollar is fiat. Chinese yuan, fiat.
Okay.
And, almost no modern economy is gold backed on their currency.
Okay.
Nowadays,
I saw that a lot of other countries are no longer buying as much U.S. bonds, but rather they're buying gold.
Yeah, mainly in Asia, right?
Yeah.
China's the biggest buyer. Korea's really big. Japan's really big. And they're the ones, if you look at the price chart of gold, right, it's gone absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
And it's because China, Japan, and Korea have huge trade surplus. So they basically have profit from government and all the companies to buy something. And then all three of those countries have low interest rates. So what do you buy? China, the real estate market's collapsing. They're not going to buy real estate. Buy stocks, Chinese stocks have done terrible for a long time. So what does the government buy with that profit? Gold. So that's why the price has gone up a lot. But, gold makes a lot of sense in all three scenarios, for what the economy can do. What I think it can do, hyperinflation from really good growth, which is one possibility. Recession, just a normal economic cycle playing out. You have a huge boom, recession, or you have, massive deflation. Bubbles burst and the wealth effect destroys everything. But gold does good in all three of those scenarios. So that's why you want to own it.
Yeah. How much does it grow every year? Around 2%, 2 to 3, and we guess to match inflation?
Gold?
Yeah. Like how the average for a T-bill or kind of bond are 4%.
Well, that's the thing, is there's no guaranteed yield on gold, right?
Yeah.
What is gold?
It's just literally like an actual metal.
Yeah. Right. So gold has no value.
Yeah.
Gold doesn't make any money, right? It doesn't produce money like a company does. So the entire idea of gold, is imagination, right?
Yeah.
Normally it's where people go to hide. But, the gold's up 55% this year.
Yeah, which is like a crazy amount for what I feel like people put into like a safe, it's as if it's just a safe thing that will slowly rise.
Well, usually, that's what it's viewed as. But, people really underestimate how much gold China's buying.
Yeah.
And they're buying so much, and they're just pushing out the market. China has killed all the sellers of gold. And now all the sellers are buyers because they know China's there, right? So, gold was up 30% or more last year and 40 the year before. So it's gone on an absolute tear, right? Like, it's not doing 2% or a bond or anything like that.
Yeah.
But, makes sense why.
Yeah, because I heard that China doesn't want to buy as much of the U.S. bond. They don't want to rely on it because that kind of boosts up their enemy. In some form, like we're not their enemy, but we're a competitor. So they'd rather buy gold.
That's the story that people will say.
Uh-huh.
But at the end of the day, China is such a small percentage of what our bond market is. 2 or 3%.
Okay.
So if we lose them as a buyer, it'll get replaced by the U.S. banking system, and nothing will ever happen, right? So them not buying bonds from us doesn't hurt us or help us really at all.
Yeah.
It's just a simple idea that, China makes money, right? The U.S. loses money, right? We spend more on imports than we make on exports. So we're losing money, right? China's the complete opposite. They're making, $300 billion every year. And if you're a country, right, you have to think, what do I want to invest in? And to be honest, U.S. Treasury bonds are not attractive at all. They're not, right? You're buying something denominated in USD when the Fed's printing 7% of the economy in dollars every year. So, they just don't want to buy bonds because bonds are a terrible investment. And gold, is a much better alternative. That's the reasoning behind it. They're not buying any more bonds, really. They still do, right? But not at the pace they were before.
Yeah. Do you hold any gold?
Yeah, like I laid out, the 3 scenarios that the economy will eventually, one of those 3 scenarios will probably happen, right? If you looked at it in 2022, when inflation was first starting to come, the first thing you should think is buy gold.
Yeah, that's what everyone first thinks.
Yeah, and so that's when I bought gold. Third, fourth quarter of 22, when inflation was showing up. It would later go to 9%, right? And then at that point, every point since then, right, we've been in a three different scenario type of economy where it's going to end bad some way, but it might, it might have a really, really super hot time before the crash, So we don't know if that's going to happen or not, but gold does good in an inflation scenario like that, where everything, growth goes crazy. AI becomes the biggest thing ever, right? And you have a lot of inflation. And gold will do great in that scenario. It'll do good in a recession, which, could easily happen if things don't pan out.
So, but when does it do bad? Deflation? But you said not really.
Well, gold does really bad when interest rates go up.
Okay.
So.
Oh, that makes sense, yeah.
Because, gold doesn't have any yield. So why would I buy gold when I say, if U.S. Treasury bonds right now were yielding 10%, I would be buying them, right? It's good, but, they yield 4%. So it's not that attractive versus gold, especially when you look at the gold chart and you see it's up 55%, this year. So people are just choosing to buy gold. There's nothing really to it.
Do you know anything about the history of gold, like how it became so popular? I don't know if you would.
Well, to be honest, it was just because it was shiny.
Yeah.
Right, that was the first thing. And it was so hard to find.
Yeah.
And so the money was always based on gold. Because, that was the most valuable thing
sense.
to.
What you always say that gold's very interesting. What about it do you think is so interesting?
Well, it's more of the history that goes along with gold, right? So when currencies were backed by gold, it was a completely different economy than what we have today. And, the economy we have today is so much more risky
Yeah.
because we're not backed by anything. And so, you would never have a situation like Zimbabwe, right? Where you had 1,000,000% inflation.
Yeah.
You would never have that scenario if their currency was backed by gold.
Was that the thing to where like people had to bring carts of the money to buy some bread?
The thing was, they say this is a weird thing, right? You would go into a cafe and order a coffee. They would make you pay up front before you got the coffee, rather than paying after the bill is done. Because by the time you drank that coffee, the value of that dollar would have, been cut in half.
What happened to Zimbabwe? Like, what made it to where their inflation?
Well, they printed so much money, right? So they come upon these huge deposits of, you dig in the ground in Zimbabwe and, diamonds are coming out and, copper is coming out and coal and all this, really, really valuable stuff. And so the truth is, a bunch of foreign companies come in, they take, joint ventures with these local people, they pay them a lot of money, and, they have no idea what to do with the money, right? So then, you have a king that takes all the power, takes all the money for himself, buys, millions of cars and all this stuff, and then you end up and you have no money. And so that's kind of what happened there. So he was basically, the rulers of Zimbabwe were just using the currency as a piggy bank. They just print more to, fund their own lifestyle.
Yeah.
That's how you get something like that. Like, that'll never happen in the U.S. ever.
Sure.
Probably.
But that kind of, okay. So the idea of, I heard this thing to where one of our greatest strengths is the value of our dollar. What makes the value of a currency strong or weak, and or kind of what raises it and whatnot?
Well, yeah, I mean,
and what does it represent?
The dollar was historically always strong because almost every transaction you do in the world, no matter where you are, is in U.S. dollar. It's the unit of currency you can take to any country and they'll accept it.
Yeah.
If I take a Singapore, dollar and bring it here, they're not going to take it, right? Because it's not that important. And so that's, there's a huge demand for dollars because every transaction is in dollars. Mm-hmm. And, the value of any currency is not just like, it's not a stock price where you can just say, oh, it's $20, right? It's always in relative to another currency. So the USD versus the euro is 1.1 right now. So that means, the euro is 10% stronger than the USD. And, historically, that was maybe 20-30%. But Europe's currency has gone really weak because of, some of the management of that country, the government, Mm-hmm. They've had 5 prime ministers, 4 years. They broke their own bond market, They're not doing well. So UK, that's a different story. But the dollar has also gotten weaker. Some of the stuff we're doing is pretty bad,
Yeah, like printing more and more money.
Yeah, I mean, I think, if we continue on the path we're at in 15, 20 years, we're going to be paying more interest on our debt than taxes we collect from everybody. Mm. And so then you're a Ponzi scheme, right?
Yeah.
Because, you're literally printing debt to fund more debt.
That's scary.
Which is, what we're doing at 7% of the economy right now. Mm-hmm. 7% deficit. That means that you're printing 7% of your economy's dollars just to, plug that gap. So.
Okay, so speaking of taxes, this is like my first year of actually paying my taxes, like myself or like me going out. And how do taxes even? So we have a portion of our money that is taken out, and
if you're W-2,
yeah, W-2, yeah. And then also if you're 1099, you have to file it yourself, and you work as a company contractor,
or independent contractor.
Yeah, but you kind of represent yourself, I guess. Is what I mean.
Yeah, you're like your own business, pretty much.
And you've said like one of the best ways like rich people save on money is the way they do their taxes. And so let's say if I'm 1099, I can just deduct a lot of, when I go and sell windows, I work as 1099. I can deduct my car, like my gas fees.
Yeah, I mean, but that's small stuff. Like,
Okay.
1099, you can do some, creative stuff, right? You can put how many miles you drove for that job. You can write off all these things. But, standard deduction is 10K. So if you're not really making money like that, you're not going to be paying 10K in tax anyway. So where you get all the benefit is by having an LLC.
Mm-hmm.
You can run so many things through an LLC or an S corp or anything. You have to be a business owner to really play with the taxes. 1099, you're not going to get more than a 10K deduction because that's what the rules are.
My friend has, I think, an LLC, and my friend and coach. My friend literally deducts a haircut for his clothing company.
Yeah, I mean, that's tax fraud, but
Okay, I was about to say, I don't even get how that could be possible.
Everyone does it, right? So it's tax fraud, but it's widely done by everybody.
Yeah, but my coach, he runs a management of MMA fighters, but he also acts as a coach for the gym. But he manages the MMA fighters, and he set up an LLC for them, for his company and management, I guess.
Yeah.
So people set up LLCs mainly for the tax deductions, and just because they have to have a reason that they're putting this money in the bank to not get caught.
I mean, it depends on why you're starting the LLC, right? If that's your first business and you're just doing it, you're just setting up an LLC because you need to get a company, right?
Yeah.
Using LLCs for taxes is a different story, right? So say you buy an asset, you buy a hotel. You could put that hotel and, report it on your personal tax return. But then you can only deduct certain things like, depreciation of the building, the maintenance repairs, the interest expense on the loan, stuff like that, right? So 5-6 things only. Now, if you set up an LLC that just owns the hotel, now you have a whole company's P&L to dissect and take money out of. So that's why you set up a company, to avoid tax. It's pretty simple, right? Then you can buy your car through the LLC, right? Your personal car, and then you say it's a business expense for this hotel. And you're really just riding around in a G-Wagon for free.
Yeah.
So that's where it gets interesting.
Yeah. Well, you also you can do
business tax returns.
A bunch of interesting things, because I had this idea to start this Mexican cleaning business where I use illegal immigrants and they clean houses for me. And hypothetically, I wanted to make a LLC for this, but you said I wouldn't be able to employ the illegal immigrants because they're illegal immigrants.
Don't do this.
Yeah, but I would employ my friends and then just file it under them. But you said actually rich people do this and they'll employ their kids and or wives. So how does this process work?
I mean, the wives usually start a bakery or something, but the kids, they definitely put them on the payroll, right? That's for sure. But this is like medium time people, right? Like these are not anyone who right?
Yeah.
They're just average, wealthy Americans. This is what they do.
Why do people explain the bakery thing?
I mean, the bakery, I don't know, the wife maybe likes cupcakes. I don't fucking know.
No, I remember we talked about it last time where you said they set up a bakery.
Oh, yeah. I mean, these are all just one-off stories, right, of things I've seen.
Yeah.
There's no rhyme or reason to why that happened. The wife liked cupcakes and the husband was like, yeah, great, let's take a $250K loss. Easy.
Yeah.
Right, if you're going to lose money, at least pay less tax on it, right? So it's just a smart thing to do at that point.
So wait, so they take the $200K loss on the bakery so that the husband doesn't have to pay as much in his taxes for his job.
Yeah, or his business.
Because they're a household.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, you can, any losses you take, right, any qualified business loss, it's 100% write-off, right? Mm-hmm. So if you make $750K in your, candle business and you lost $250 in your hot dog business, as long as the IRS knows, you only made $500K. So you're only going to pay the tax on the $500. So, if your wife's going to start a bakery or your kids are, going to be a lawyer or something, right? Might as well take the loss.
Makes sense. Or pause it. Over the weekend, my friend, who does not have medical insurance, broke his arm, and he had to get surgery the next day. He stayed in the hospital for 2 days, and he also had to be taken there by the ambulance. He does have a clothing company, but he doesn't have medical insurance himself because it's like his own company, and he just very dumbly didn't get insurance given that he is like an MMA fighter.
Yeah.
Smart guy though, but yeah.
Well, is he okay?
He's fine. It was just an arm, so it wasn't like the worst thing ever. But I don't even get, so much of insurance doesn't make sense to me.
What about it?
Like, you pay for insurance, and he wouldn't actually have to pay the $100,000 that he would normally be charged for without the insurance. So you just pay for insurance just in case these ginormous events like this, like a surgery for breaking your arm.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
pay a monthly fee.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right, and the insurance company's hope is that the premiums you pay over your lifetime are more than the treatments they gave to you.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much, right? They paid for your surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So they're betting that, you're going to have one surgery, every time they renew the health plan, which is every year. So healthcare is a really interesting insurance industry because it's 1-year terms for the most part, right? People renew it every year. So you can choose whether to carry someone or not.
Yeah.
Based on, if they got a surgery last year. So a lot of people, who get cancer or something, sadly, the second you get cancer, you're dropped.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You're dropped from the insurance company because you're going to be so unprofitable that they couldn't survive, to the next day.
Wait, so you say that they have 1 year insurance things so that they can drop them like this?
Yeah, so what's happening now is insurance companies are feeling the pain because medical costs are just spiking like crazy. And people are choosing to do more surgeries. Or maybe they're just getting hurt more, I don't know. But, what's happened is that has eroded all of their profits. Because when they priced those premiums, they priced them too low. Right? So they thought that it would take them $100 million, to break even on their medical costs that they would pay to their members. But their members, in the past few years have been using $150,000, right, worth of medical care. So they're losing money. But, beauty of health insurance is it's 1-year term. So if someone gets cancer next year, you just boot them off.
That's crazy.
You just kick them out as a customer, right? And then every other insurance company sees, oh, this person has cancer on their records. I'm not going to take them because there's no premium, you could charge enough, right, to make money on that person. So,
so
it's a very interesting insurance industry.
Yeah. Do a lot of people, this is legit a stat where a lot of people that have cancer and or to where they'll need a lot of help aren't able to get insurance or their premiums are just way higher?
Yeah, I personally know somebody that happened to.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, they got cancer. I won't go into the details really that much, but pretty much got dropped from their insurance pretty soon after they got their first treatment, and now they had to go to one of the government care plans because the premium would have been like $20,000 a month or something, crazy.
Yeah. Or they'll just have to pay out of pocket.
Yeah, or they pay out of pocket, right? But
yeah. So I just applied for Medi-Cal.
Yeah.
How does so that's a government subsidy?
So Medi-Cal is, part of Medicaid.
Yeah.
It's just called Medi-Cal in California, but it is Medicaid. And Medicaid is joint funded. So it's funded at the state level and the federal level.
Uh-huh.
So there's a federal budget every year for Medicaid for the entire United States. And the federal government puts in, whatever they feel is appropriate based on the projection of, how much healthcare companies are asking for their plans, right? And so essentially what happens is they have that budget, and then they get revenues from, the health insurance companies. And so Medicaid, it doesn't really fall along those lines. But it's maybe half the payer, half the insurance company.
Is Medicaid, it's like what is it, government sponsored company? Like what is it actually part of the government or no?
Yeah, Medicaid is funded by the federal government,
Okay.
and then the state.
Okay.
And so those dollars that are put into that budget are the revenues of the, publicly listed government insurance companies.
Yeah.
Right. So that budget equals, their revenue for that year.
Yeah.
And they all bid on a contract to win with the state. And so they all bid way too low. So now they're losing money. So next year, they're gonna bid very high because the medical cost is really high.
Yeah.
So that means, everyone's premium will go up 15 to 45% next year.
Wow.
Government, non-government, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's insane. Because I would say a lot of people think our medical costs are already pretty high.
Well, yeah, they're about to see something, right? This 2026. It'll be very, very high.
Yeah. So we're both long on a company called Molina.
Yeah.
Why? Like, explain that stock. Like, why are you long on them?
Yeah, so that's it. Molina's mostly a Medicaid stock, right?
Yeah.
So there's no insurance company that's a pure play on one type of health insurance, but Molina's pretty close. They're pretty much all in on Medicaid. They have some Medicare, and then they have some marketplace, which is extended coverage, non-government, marketplace, individual people shopping for insurance. They don't have an employer, and they're not on a government plan, so they have to go shop for it themselves and insure themselves. That's what the marketplace is. And Molina, out of all the publicly listed government health players, they've historically had the best margins, and they've had the best. There's something in the industry called a stars rating, and that actually affects how much these public health insurance companies make. And so it's 1 to 5 stars, and every plan that the insurance company makes is rated 1 to 5 stars. And so Molina has some of the best stars in Medicaid, 3-4 stars. So that means the value in healthcare that they provide to the customers is just as much as they're making. And that's basically what the stars rank is made on. How efficient is the health plan? And so they've been the best historically in that, and their margins have been the highest. So they have it, they have a cushion to soak up some of this medical cost increase, right? A lot of their competitors are losing money. They're still making money, right? But it's 50% less than what they were. So that's where the opportunity is, right? Stock has dropped a lot. And the earnings have as well. But the beauty with health insurance is that every year, most of your, revenue resets. And you can bid for higher revenue. If you saw too many costs last year, it's like rolling a dice. Now on all of these, state auctions for these contracts, you bid very high. And so the ones you win, you're going to make margin on. And so, I think what will happen next year is their revenue will not grow very much. But they'll be insuring less people and at higher rates. So, profitability will be good.
Yeah. Explain the contracts. So I don't even understand the idea of the contracts.
Okay, so,
if they're connected to the government, I guess.
So the state wants Medicaid, right?
Yeah.
So the federal government puts money, state puts money.
That makes sense.
And that fund, that budget, pays these companies to create medical plans, insurance plans, right? So they build out the drugs that will be used for, you know, pain medicine and this and that, right? They build a formulary, and then, you know, they build the premium structure. They build the, in many parts, you know, they define the care network, so like, you know, which medical offices near you are included in that plan. They have, you know, even some plans, you know, HMOs, stuff like that, they hire their own doctors for the plan. But, you know, government's not like that. You just contract with the hospitals and the care providers. And so the government's essentially outsourcing the responsibility of healthcare to these companies.
Yeah.
And they're giving them a contract to do that.
Okay.
So the health plans do everything, right? They manage everything.
Okay, that makes sense. So is our medical system private, technically, but also it's in some form, like basically the government, since the government is just paying for them?
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty common in the United States, but a lot of companies, a lot of industries are directly sponsored by the government, right? And so this whole sector of managed care providers, these health insurance companies, are fully dependent on the United States government.
Yeah.
Whether it's a state or federal. If state or federal stop funding this program, you know, Obamacare, that's its current iteration, you know, it's over, right? No one has any health care. So it's a private industry, but it's basically part of the government.
Yeah.
It's just not technically, right? You can buy their shares and all that.
Yeah. So Medicare and Medi-Cal, I get that they're funded by the government, but
Yeah.
They're technically private, or no?
They're government programs.
Okay, so okay.
But the government programs hire private contractors to do the work. That's what the basic, you know, managed care industry looks like.
Yeah. And you said like how do hospitals kind of make money? Because they kind of need people to keep getting hurt and keep getting sick. Right?
Yeah, and so they're in the lucky camp, and that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Right? People are getting sicker and sicker. You know, they're getting hurt more often. And so that's a bad thing for the health insurance companies.
Yeah.
Because it means they can't price their plans, you know, with any certainty. But it's extremely good for hospitals, right? And because the hospitals just take those costs, right, that are increasing, and then they charge their 5% on top of it, or 10% on top of it, you know, for value-added care, or whatever they say. And so, you know, the earnings of the hospital operators in the market right now is just going through the roof. And so they're the really big winner of, you know, health costs going up.